1. On January 15, 2023, a major incident unfolded in the logistics sector at a mid-sized company named OptiStock, located in Denver, Colorado. OptiStock specialized in inventory management solutions, providing businesses with algorithm-driven insights designed to optimize stock levels while minimizing waste. The central component of OptiStock's offering was its advanced inventory management algorithm, built to predict demand trends across various sectors by analyzing historical sales data, seasonal fluctuations, and external market indicators. Unfortunately, a seemingly minor code error quietly existed within the algorithm's demand forecasting module. This flaw stemmed from an overlooked conditional statement in the code that misinterpreted certain external sales data inputs. In particular, when sales data contained anomalies, such as flash sales or promotional events, the algorithm failed to adjust the projections accurately, leading it to generate inflated demand forecasts for specific products. The error was not quickly identifiable, given the complex nature of the algorithm and the myriad data points processed daily. The first measurable impact of this oversight emerged approximately 2 weeks post-incident. Internal audits revealed that, based on the faulty forecasts, numerous clients of OptiStock commenced reorder processes for inventory at an unprecedented rate. Misguided by artificially high demand expectations, clients increased orders by an average of 150% for key items, leading to inventory depletion at various warehouses. Within days, over 300 retailers reported significant shortages of critical supplies, affecting essential goods ranging from perishable food items to pharmaceuticals. By January 30th, these shortages prompted various stakeholders to raise alarms as customer dissatisfaction grew. Subscription-based analytics showed a staggering drop in consumer engagement for the affected goods, with some retailers recording a 30% decrease in sales due to empty shelves. Furthermore, the financial ramifications began to surface. Preliminary estimates suggested a potential loss of upwards of $5 million across all affected clients compared to the previous year's quarter. As the chaos began to unfold, the initial reactions within OptiStock were characterized by confusion and a lack of coordinated response. Internal emails started circulating among the operations and technical teams, seeking to diagnose the sudden spike in ordered items. Teams used the internal incident channel to initiate discussions, but without clear logs or error tracking, it became increasingly difficult to identify the root cause quickly. Initial assumptions gravitated toward external factors affecting client demand, with some team members positing that recent weather conditions and market trends could have played a role in the perceived demand spikes. Outside the confined discussion rooms of OptiStock, external signals began to compound the internal uncertainty. As users reported shortages to customer service lines, minor media mentions began to rise, tipping off local news outlets about the supply issues. Social media channels saw rising complaints about shortages, attracting the attention of industry analysts. Monitoring alerts from various retailers indicated alarming trends, as consumer behavior shifted dramatically in response to availability crises. Faced with dismal projections for the upcoming weeks, a few key decisions were made within OptiStock. The executive team convened an emergency meeting where they filtered through incident reports and user feedback to establish a priority list for solution efforts. Some managers proposed increasing inventory thresholds to compensate for the influx of orders, which would lead to mounting costs and strained logistics networks. Others recommended directing resources toward investigating potential internal flaws in the algorithm itself, though such an internal review risked further delaying resolution. In the backdrop, industry sentiment began to shift. Analysts started questioning the reliability of automated systems, pointing out that the reliance on algorithms without sufficient oversight could lead to further risk triggers across interconnected supply networks. Discussions within various trade channels highlighted fears that if OptiStock could miss such a critical flaw, what other vulnerabilities existed within the digital supply chain frameworks widely adopted across the industry. As the internal chaos continued, whispers of the impending supply chain crisis spread, reaching corporations and entities that depended on OptiStock's solutions. Wholesalers began to reconsider inventory partnerships, while retailers scrambled to find alternative suppliers. Concurrently, the vendor dependency on OptiStock became starkly apparent as downstream clients experienced cascading failures and uncertainty. The ripple effects of operational missteps soon posed questions about resiliency and continuity in a hyper-connected marketplace. Meanwhile, prominent supply chain experts convened to analyze the ongoing disruptions, seeking to track the origins of the escalating crisis. Individual case studies began to emerge, highlighting exactly how OptiStock's algorithm had altered supply flows and contributed to broader systemic vulnerabilities. Closer examination indicated that without a robust auditing mechanism, reliance on algorithm-driven decisions represented not merely a risk, but a modern vulnerability precipitating economic instability. By early February, efforts to execute partial fixes were underway, yet the algorithm's core flaw remained largely unaddressed. As stakeholders clashed over crisis management strategies, it became evident that identifying a resolution would require deeper investigation and reform, not only within OptiStock, but across various sectors that had similarly adopted algorithmic forecasting without adequate safety nets. The looming question soon became whether the measures taken would be sufficient to prevent further disruptions, or whether the impacts of the original error would continue to reverberate far beyond the initial shock. As external pressures mounted, the situation began to escalate rapidly. By mid-February, OptiStock's executive team attempted to communicate with their client base, issuing statements to explain that the supply disruptions were temporary and largely due to unprecedented market fluctuations. However, instead of quelling concerns, these efforts faltered under scrutiny, as many clients demanded more transparency regarding the algorithmic failures. Tensions rose as suppliers cut ties with OptiStock, fearing further loss in revenue should the crises worsen. By late February, the financial repercussions became evident. Corporate clients began reporting significant losses as their operations ground to a halt due to depleted inventories. Analysts estimated that the cumulative financial hit to affected sectors could reach billions, with estimates reflecting a severe downturn in stock prices for numerous companies that relied heavily on OptiStock for their supply chain management. Preparations for audits and legal notices began to take shape as stakeholders recognized the potential for long-term consequences grounded in both loss of revenue and market reputation. Internal communications from OptiStock's development teams finally yielded a confession. The original error lay in a single piece of code, which had inadvertently altered demand variables used throughout the entire inventory optimization algorithm. This confirmation sparked calls for accountability, inciting not only internal reviews, but also demand for third-party investigations into other potential vulnerabilities rife within similarly automated systems. The prospect of criminal negligence lingered in the background, as some industry watchdogs began to independently collect data testimonies from affected businesses. In early March, as the crisis continued to escalate, major retailers and wholesalers began filing formal complaints against OptiStock, seeking accountability for the significant disruptions. Legal actions led to preliminary subpoenas requiring detailed disclosures from all parties involved in the supply chain framework. Court filings revealed statistics showing that nearly 30% of affected companies were forced to implement drastic layoffs due to inventory inaccuracies driven by OptiStock's miscalculations. Reports underscored that the ripple effect not only disrupted supply chains, but also weakened consumer trust in brands reliant on their systems. Simultaneously, industry experts began publicizing information shedding light on the intertwined dependencies sustained by digital algorithms. A journalistic investigation uncovered detailed internal chat logs from OptiStock that indicated a reluctance to admit the algorithm's flaws due to fear of fallout among stakeholders. This expose, published in a leading financial outlet, went viral, prompting a significant outcry from the global business community. By April, law enforcement agencies initiated their investigations into possible fraud associated with the responses and corrective measures undertaken by OptiStock management. Corporate whistleblowers surfaced, presenting evidence that suggested executives had ignored earlier warnings regarding the potential ramifications of unaddressed software bugs. Faced with growing backlash, the company's leadership announced a temporary suspension of algorithm-based product recommendations, signaling a shift in their operational paradigm. The fallout continued to spread throughout the industry over subsequent months. By mid-May, OptiStock faced bankruptcy proceedings, forced to liquidate assets and negotiate settlements with affected clients. Service shutdowns became imminent, as formerly loyal clients migrated their operations to competing platforms offering cookie-cutter solutions, thereby eroding OptiStock's market share. Key executives resigned as mounting pressure culminated in widespread distrust toward the company's capabilities. By July, as investigations concluded, charges were filed against several former executives for negligence and misrepresentation. Public sentiment shifted sharply, leading to an irreversible loss of access for OptiStock to key client databases, essentially rendering their platform obsolete. From the ashes of their operational collapse, various industry watchdogs began advocating for legislation to monitor automated supply chain solutions more rigorously, aiming to avert future systemic failures. As the effects continued to unfold, an industry compelled to reflect on the harmful consequences of unchecked automation established various forums for dialogue aimed at reform and recovery. Gradually, the conversation transitioned toward establishing standards promoting algorithm transparency and resilience. By early September 2023, OptiStock was officially dissolved, marking the end of a cautionary tale about over-reliance on automation without stringent oversight. The catastrophic supply chain crisis initiated by a minor code error carried consequences that reverberated through multiple levels of the global economy, underscoring the need for a more deliberate approach to integrating technology into complex systems. Final assessments indicated that lessons learned would proceed to shape industry standards, highlighting the necessity for comprehensive risk assessments in algorithm-based decision-making processes. Final status: OptiStock ceased operations on September 1, 2023, under bankruptcy proceedings.